worship warriors of the world. Thanks for tuning in once again to see us. I have with me today Blayne Cook, who has recently come out with an pretty exciting and awesome and very interesting album. And I was recently invited to one of his gatherings where he shared this album with everybody, and he shared a lot of his heart in the making of that album. And I was very intrigued. I really loved the music, and all the stories and everything behind it as well was just really heart. It really touched my heart. So I'm really excited that we get to have him here on this channel. So Blayne, would you like to go ahead and tell us, some more about this album, how you ended up coming up with the name, anything that you want to share that you feel is worth sharing?
Sure. You bet. Thank you so much for having me on your channel.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've been a musician my whole life and been writing songs for a long time. But I've never released it. This is my first time to release music to the world. And I can't say honestly that it started with the vision of an album. It started with it's really been a few years in the making when you look at the progression of the songs that I've written for it. The first one was back in 2021, and that song's about a tree. And then walking a mile of your shade, I'm one of millions you've seen. Your arms diving to the ground, rising again and free. And then the next year I wrote a song called Perfect Time. It's all right, it's okay. You were bound for greater meaning from today. 'Cause you are salt, you are light, here at the perfect time. And spent a bulk of the year on a song called On the Waves. And then to starboard, push away from shore. Now unmoored and compensating every fall. And then the fourth one to come along to round out the 4-song EP is called Song of the Shell. And so yes, drift through the valley and rise, see the world through these fiery blue eyes. The direction you swim, you are wearing a fortress and winged like a seraphim. It was really in looking for, I thought, well, I need a title. I need a name for this project. So I went looking for what are the commonalities between trees, time, waves, and shells. And the answer was obvious. They're all examples of fractal patterns in nature. And so I just about fell out of my chair because that was, there have been song ideas that have come and gone. I had a vision for a lengthy song that would have several different movements and be involved and kind of tell a story. But I kind of abandoned it because I thought, well, it may be too ambitious a project. As it turned out, I created something very much like that. It's the song that ends the album is an 11-minute long song with 3 distinct movements. It just needed to be about waves, not the other thing. So it's like when I got to the end of it and realized there was this common thread running throughout it, and I hadn't realized it. I just thank the Lord so much for this guidance. I feel like this is the kind of thing that when you open yourself up to the Lord's guidance, that you that you're going to find that to be the case, that things are going to flow in a way that you may not even be aware of. So that was where when I thought definitely the title then needed to be something having to do with the fractal, but it's really about creation and life and the life in all of these things and the life surrounding them. So that's when the title Living Fractal came to be. And the cover of the album depicts all four of these symbols that are kind of the centerpiece of the album.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, when you were explaining the fractal part to us at your house, I found that to be really fascinating because I have heard, I'm not sure if they actually officially call it this, but I've heard a lot of people say that fractals are like the God pattern.
Mhm.
It's like an endless pattern of life, basically, of patterns.
Yes.
Yeah.
And repeating patterns that are self-similar, repeating infinitely in every direction. So up to the scale of the universe and down to the scale of the atom and beyond, right? So yeah, it's all encompassing. This whole concept of the, the divine pattern repeating throughout all of existence is really compelling to me.
Yeah. That is so cool. And I love the journeys that the Lord takes us on in figuring out what are we going to call these things. I go through similar journeys whenever I'm trying to come up with a new pattern for my flag moves and anything, like when I'm creating flags, like what do you want me to call this? And
Mhm.
so, and sometimes it's just as simple as looking it up on Google versus the Lord just dropping it straight into your spirit. So
Yeah.
yeah, pretty interesting. All right. So are there any like, do you have one song that's like your favorite that you might want to talk about in detail?
Um, well, man, it's hard to pick a favorite. They're um they're all they're all a unique expression. I think the album opener is the song Perfect Time. And that song is one that really deals with the unique expression that every person is in their lives with their personalities and their gifts. Um, and that we all have in common that we walk through dark valleys. So many years ago, my wife and I sung in a choir. We had a chance to sing the Rudder Requiem, which is this long piece of music, and it goes back and forth over and over again. Musically, it goes from darkness to light. So moving from what's considered musically maybe darker chords like minors and tritone intervals and things like that into opening up into majors and major suspensions and all these things happening. And the music would move that way as the lyrics, the sung lyrics did as well. So they were in harmony with each other, moving from darkness to light over and over and over again. I was so compelled by that this was the spirit in which I wanted to write the song that became Perfect Time. So I hope I've accomplished that with that the verses, that you'll get a sense for both the music and the words, moving through a dark time en route to an opening up that is the chorus, that is full of expressions of it alludes to Christ saying you are salt, you are light, and so the chorus opens up to celebrate the unique expressions of heaven that each of us are in the world.
Mhm.
So this one has a lot of and all the songs. I really delight musically in writing things that are very melodic and have layers of vocal harmony. Um, so this is one where I have my daughter singing with me. And indeed, my entire family sings on the album. There's one song in particular, Song of the Shell, that has every member of the family singing on it in an a cappella section that's kind of the centerpiece of the song. But yeah, Perfect Time is the opener, and I hope it's kind of a fanfare, and really it's really a song of hope for everyone who hears it, is my intent for that song.
I feel like you've
Um,
achieved
Go
that.
ahead.
I felt that. I often see colors and patterns and whatnot when I'm listening to music. So when you described it that way, I was like, I can definitely see how it has the darkness and the light mixing in together and everything. So that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Um, what kind of genre would you call the music?
Yeah, I have had a hard time answering that question because and truly for a long time I've resisted answering that question because I thought, well, if I shouldn't be able to, to put a label on a genre label on what I do. It's kind of but then I read something recently that was like telling you all the things you need to think about when you release an album. And one thing it said was you need your elevator pitch.
Hmm.
And so it's like when you have only the space of an elevator ride with a person and they want you to tell them what your music is like, what do you say in that short amount of time? And I thought, well, that challenged me. That kind of challenged this sensibility of mine where it's like, I don't want to be able to have to reduce it down. It's like, no, you need to be able to reduce it down. And so, um, so usually I describe it as it's melodic. I do have some heavy sections. I love, I love all kinds of kind of tempos, styles of music, but I landed on like deep progressive rock. There's some soft rock elements, and it's melodic with a lot of vocal harmony and spiritual. And so I hope that kind of encompasses it a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
I really, okay, this is so fascinating to me because there's somebody else who came up on my radar literally just this week. They had produced an album, and I didn't even have, like, I'm friends with his wife on Facebook. We don't really know each other personally. They actually live in Europe. They produced an album. I had no idea that she was even working on this. Like, I see her all the time on Facebook. I had no idea she was working on this. So when I heard the album, I was like, boy, this sounds really different. And I'd really like to, I figured, well, why not just ask them if they'd be willing to be interviewed on my channel as well. So I ended up interviewing them this morning. And the interesting thing is that their music is also like a fusion of genres.
mm,
It's different kinds of rock styles mixed in with different kinds of metal styles. And that's something I love. I seem to be really attracted to that kind of creativity,
mm,
because for our ministry, for example, my preferred method of worship, of course, is dance. And however, not just any one style of dance. I love the cultural fusion to put
yeah.
in my dances. So I think it's really interesting what the Lord is doing. I don't know if this is really a new thing. It's kind of new for me, where I'm seeing all these new musicians come out with these very different kinds of music, and I think it's fascinating and a lot of fun to learn about
Another
and hear. So.
another thing that I really wanted to do musically was, and it's part of the reason why it takes me so long to get a song done, is that I like to have time to really iterate and create and build. And I play the guitar, the piano, and the lead vocal is all me. My son drums, plays bass. And we layer all these on as opposed to a situation where maybe you go into the studio and do it all in one go because anymore, you studio time's expensive. So you really have to have everything kind of nailed down. You have to go in there. Mistakes are money, redos are money. So when I think about a group like the Beatles and the way that they used to record, they used to have like 10 hours in the studio crafting the song. And if you go listen to earlier versions of something they did, what you hear is they changed the tempo. They were playing it way slower at one point, or they changed the key.
Mm.
It's like you would never do these kinds of things in a studio environment these days, right? But I wanted that level of freedom to um, to really learn what the song was as we went along. And there's such a beauty in that, hearing it come together. And then once you know, there's momentum to the finish. But early on, yeah, it can be it can be unclear at first when you've just got the piano and a melody, what all the movements might be that are involved. So this project really represents each song took months to do. The shortest one being Song of the Shell, which I just recorded in about a month. The rest of it have been in the works since about 2021, and so it's I hope that that it that people can appreciate maybe a richness, a quality of richness that it has for it having been worked on so long and iteratively in that way.
Mhm. I like that. That's a great way to describe it. I do feel like there's a lot of richness in it. Like not only the stories behind it, the wording, the amazing like layers of music that are in it. So
Mm,
I love
thank you.
it.
Thank you.
So if it's all right, would you be willing to maybe talk a little bit more about the one about the tree? That was the one that
Yeah.
really me a lot. And of course my daughter really, as you know,
Mhm.
was really captivated by that one. She ended up
Yeah.
writing through a poem and everything and shared it with all of us. And it was just a fascinating thing that it came out of your creativity.
Mhm.
It was like the gift that kept on giving. So yeah, I would love to hear more about that. And then I'll share some of my thoughts.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, that song was inspired by my wife's and my visiting in Charleston, South Carolina. There's a place called John's Island. And if you go there, you can see this tree that's called the angel oak tree. And it is a massive old oak tree. I was looking today, its age is estimated to be around 500 years. It's one of the oldest trees around in that part of the country. And so it covers, I was reading about it today, it covers 17,000 square feet of ground. It is a massive tree.
Yeah.
And now don't think like, please go look at a picture of it. Like, don't think redwood, like, that it blows you away with its height. It
Mhm.
blows you away. It's 65 feet high, so it is high, but its width and its branches are so huge that they come all the way to the ground and they go into the ground and then they reemerge and they keep going out to the drip line of the tree. It's such a fantastic, beautiful sight that I found overwhelming. I feel like it's so large and so old that you can its energy is palpable. You can just feel the life force of this tree. And when you start thinking about the expanse of time that it has seen on
Mhm.
this planet. So it would have been a sapling around the time that William Shakespeare was actively writing his plays, right? It's like that old. Um, and so, yeah, I was very moved by it. My wife and I both were very moved by it. And to go in toward its massive trunk and to feel like it beckons that it just says, "Come here, come closer," and to put your hand on its branches and to realize the age, just the sheer magnificence of the being that you're in contact with. Um, the song "Sacred Ground" um, was was penned for that tree, and it's basically a an observation of it, but also considering its view, its perspective. Um, so another note is that we went back to South Carolina a second time and went to the tree again. This time the song was in process, but I wanted to get a recording at the tree itself. So I had my cell phone and I was recording sounds as I walked around the tree. And the funny thing is it has so many visitors. And the other thing is both times we were there were people that will show up, they'll camp out, they'll set up an easel and they'll paint that tree. It inspires so much art. That's just amazing. But I was recording the tree and I was trying to decide, do I want birds in this recording? Do I want, but I kept getting the voices of people And I was trying to get a recording where I had just a continuous sound of just the wind through its leaves and the birds in its branches. But I noted later as I listened to the recording I'd taken, in picking up the voices of people, I heard three different languages spoken. And so I didn't wind up using those, but the sounds at the beginning of the song that you hear are sounds that I recorded while at the very tree. So the tree features, it has a guest spot in in the recording itself. And but I just thought that was beautiful how the evidence of the draw that this thing is through nothing more than just being what it is. It draws people to gaze upon it, to experience its shade, and also to create their art inspired by it.
Mm, yeah, that's so, oh man. So for me, when you were describing all that, I'm going to be honest with you, I got really choked up, and I'm kind of getting choked up now because it reminds me so much of the banyan tree in Hawaii. And it's the same way. There's so many visitors, so many. I mean, we're talking generations that have played under that tree. I played under that tree. My mom did, my grandpa did, my great
Mhm.
grandpa did. Generation after generation have been at this tree. And for those of you who don't know, maybe a little bit more context when it comes to the banyan tree, I'm talking about one of the biggest trees on Maui. And I am from Maui. I'm originally from Lahaina, and everybody knows there recently was a fire, really devastating fire. And that tree is extremely special and sacred to our people. And so that was immediately one of the first things, besides, obviously being devastated over the loss of loved ones. The next question in all of our heads was, how is the banyan tree? Did it burn down? Like,
Mm.
it was almost like it was one of our relatives, that we were just as worried about it as we were our own family members. And that's because of, almost like I want to say, like there's the presence of wisdom that's there, because that tree has experienced so much over the years. Now it's not 500 years old, but I think it's somewhere between 150 and 200 years old. So it is pretty old, and it's humongous. I think they said that the circumference of that tree is over half a mile long.
Wow.
It's really big, enormous. Yeah. So, and I have seen artists also set themselves up and paint that tree and its surroundings, music, people play music under it, kids are playing under it. So I was like, feeling really choked up about your
Mm.
story of this tree and everything. And then of course my daughter got really inspired as well.
Yeah,
And she thought the same thing also about the banyan tree and everything else. So um yeah, I guess that's all I wanted to share about that. And
amazing.
I guess another thing that I would really like to share about that is it revives hope in me, because the banyan tree didn't actually burn down. It went into, I don't remember what they called it, like the arborists that were trying to diagnose it months ago. They said that it didn't die. It went into like a hibernation of sorts.
Mm.
And so they had to do a lot of work to kind of bring it back out. And you know, I guess it took all of its energy down into the roots to protect itself. So
Wow.
praise God. And also, during all that stuff that happened during the fire, I really felt like the Lord was saying to me, this tree is going to be a symbol of your people's hope.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I could stop right there.
Amen.
I'm definitely gonna start crying.
I love that. Here I live in Oklahoma City, and we have the survivor tree near the site of the Murrah building bombing that happened in 1995. And so it was a tree that was damaged in the blast, but similarly survived. And we it when we have ice storms, there are people who work around the clock to keep the ice off of the branches, keep the tree warm, and prevent it from being broken by these storms. And I've read that it's one of the most cared for trees in the world. And so a similar thing, with trees so often are a symbol of hope, especially if they have been um, near a point of disaster.
Yeah. Wow, that's all so beautiful. Is there anything else you wanted to share, regarding the album and everything, the songs, maybe like how you decided to name them or whatnot? Anything.
It's cool. The songs pretty much name themselves. That was a really nice thing, was that the themes were so um they were pointed enough that I didn't search for a name, it's like um it was obvious where the title happens in the song. It's right where it should be. And so Sacred Ground is one of them. Um, on the Waves was the next one recorded, and that was the one that took me 7 months to do because it's a pretty long song, and yeah, spans several different styles. But for this one, I was dealing with the whole idea of challenge, of stepping out. So I was surprised. I have a friend that I've recorded guitar on his albums. His name's Ted Hammond. Speaking of Ted, so he is a excellent musician and also a graphic design artist. He's actually the one who did the cover art for Living Fractal. And his inviting me to play guitar on two of his albums was a big reason why I got the motivation to do this album.
Okay. That's awesome. So, does he have his own album out also, or
Yeah, so the first of his that I played on is called Second Chances, and then last year he released one called Global Village. Jazz musician, instrumental music, just a tremendous composer. So I enjoy contributing to his albums as well. And he told me on the eve of his album releases, he would get very anxious, and he'd say, "This is just it's scary," and I didn't understand at all what he meant. I thought, in my mind, I thought, how hard can it be? You record the songs, you get it all done, you release it. Yay. And I was kind of surprised by the anxiety that arose just with the whole idea of taking these things. I've been writing music, like I said, my whole life, but I've been, you know, kind of holding it close and not releasing it. And once you do that, you have this sense of, oh my goodness, you're sending these things out there for people to, maybe not like them, maybe judge them, maybe, it's like, who knows? You're sending them out into the world, and then, but that's the negative way to look at it. The positive way is, I mean, you're letting that art go live a life wholly separate from you, that and it will bring meaning to people, and it may be totally different meaning than I intended or felt as I was creating it. um and that doesn't happen if you hold it close. I mean, we're told that very specifically with the parable of the talents in the Bible. It's like, not to hide it, not to bury it, so that, look, I've got the thing. It's like, yeah, but you didn't let the thing go and multiply.
Right.
So, but what I was surprised by was that there is some anxiety associated with that. And so the song On the Waves alludes to the story of, there are two stories in the New Testament, one in the Gospel of Mark and one in the Gospel of Matthew, where the apostles are in a storm in a boat. In Mark's account, Jesus is asleep, and they wake him up. In their anxiousness, they wake him up, and he comes up and he calms the storm. And in Matthew's account, he had gone on to be by himself, and when they're in the storm-tossed boat, they see him walking on the water toward them. And Peter says, "Lord, if it's you, command me to get out of the boat, and I can walk on the water with you." And Jesus says, "Come." He invites him out of the boat. Like the boat, they're in kind of a mode of relative safety, but it's still tossed around. It's still scary, and there's fear. And yet Jesus invites Peter to step over and walk with him on the waves. So I thought this call to step out of the boat, the call to get out of the comfort zone and do something, for the kingdom in the world is the call. And so and it is scary. Like it should be a little scary. um but that song is really a focus on that. And if the movements of the song had a name, it might be On the Waves. Kind of the lyrical song starts it out. The second movement is a lot of vocals, but no lyrics. It's all just sounds. And that part might represent the relative safety, but kind of close fear of the boat. And then kind of a metal section that becomes the storm-tossed waves. That goes back and forth between a heavy and a melodic section. This is one of those fun things for me as I was writing this, is I found that the two sections run concurrently. I wrote them separately, and then I found out when played concurrently, they worked together.
Mhm.
So I thought this was I was so excited. I I got on my phone and recorded that, sent it to my son who drums on the album, and just said, "Man, look at this." And so that is kind of the harmony of stepping into the unknown, and yet eyes on the Lord, and finding that you can walk with him. And yet we go back to the part where Peter becomes afraid again on the waves, and begins to sink and
Mhm.
calls out, and Jesus saves him. So there's all these back and forth moments of I'm doing it, oh no, but then rescue. And so
Mhm.
I thought it was a story that was with me, as I said, several months of doing the song, um, wanting to go every chance I got to the ocean to experience waves and be in them, and um, yeah, just kind of living out that whole story.
Yeah, I love that. I could totally relate in my own journey of, being a worshiper and the kind of worship that I do, wanting to just run away. And in some ways I did. I have done that only to be drug back and, because the Lord's not gonna have that. If he's got a calling on your life, you're going to fulfill it, whether you want to or not.
Yeah,
So, and then, also stepping out in faith and, okay, I'm gonna do this. I must be crazy. Like, what am I doing?
yeah,
So it's really terrifying, but it's so worth it. And yeah, and
yes,
what I love too about the story about, Peter and Yeshua on the water, is that Yeshua doesn't like condemn him for
yeah,
for losing his faith. He saves him, and he's just so like, oh Peter, why
yeah,
did you trust me? Um, but yeah,
yes.
he wasn't awful about it. He was
Hmm.
actually kind about it.
He
And he let
was, and again, they got back in the boat together, and again, as in Mark's gospel, Jesus calms the waves, but not before he let Peter experience that on the water with him.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm so thankful, yeah, thankful for that, and certainly for you for stepping through that in your own life and your own art and everything that you do. Another passage that has been with me through the release process was reading about God's instructions to Moses about how to construct the tabernacle. And I noticed something I'd never really thought about before as I was reading this text, and it goes through this pretty much twice, because one time that it goes through it is God's instructions, and the next time it goes through it is the Israelites actually following through on those instructions, and it's almost word for word the same.
Mhm.
But as God is telling Moses how to create the tabernacle, he keeps calling on the skills of specific kinds of talented people. He'll say things like that there should be the blue curtains with cherubims embroidered into them. It's like the work of a skilled embroiderer, for example, or all throughout he's calling on specific disciplines and people sometimes by name, saying, I've equipped them with this skill, this knowledge about how to do this. So it is God giving us the gifts and then calling those gifts out in the world. So I thought that was another reassurance that I found it recently in Exodus as I was considering releasing this to the world.
Yeah. So is that a recent thing that you noticed? I have my own thing that I want to add. So I'm just curious though. Is that a recent thing that you noticed about the tabernacle and everything?
Yeah, yes, I think it might be the first time, like I've been aware of the story, but a lot of people, I mean, it sometimes gets a bad name, for lack of a better word, like people don't want to read oh my gosh, so many mundane details about the temple and so many, it's like, but yeah, I thought, what else is there to see here? And the more I look, the more I think, and my recent reading of it, that just kept popping out over and over. And I really do think I hadn't noticed it before or had anyone point it out before that I could think of.
Yeah. The reason I ask is because I think you're like the third person in like the last month who has said that to me in one way or another. And I just find that really fascinating, kind of wondering what the Lord's up to because I I've actually been studying, like really deeply studying the Old Testament for about somewhere between 10 and 12, maybe 13 years. And I still remember when the Lord started opening my eyes to the same thing, where it was like you said, there's so many mundane details, it's boring, and I don't understand why the Lord puts so much emphasis on you got to do it this way. But it's really interesting because I think my perspective was just kind of certain things that I just didn't notice, which that was one of them, was the artistry that went into it, the absolute beauty, all the details, so much work that had to have gone into it, and it was beautiful. It wasn't just something that was just kind of slapped together. It was gorgeous.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing too, not only that, is the Lord had me set this ministry up with that in mind. First of all, my birthday Torah portion is I keep forgetting the actual name of it, but it has to do with the tabernacle and all the
Mm.
people bringing the supplies needed, and then also the how the Lord mentioned a couple of guys. One was like 13, I think, at the time, by name. These are the ones who are the skilled artisans that I want to build these specific things. And he, as a result of it, like everything that goes into this ministry has to do with the tabernacle. The colors that I've
Mm.
chosen for my branding is because of that. So,
Wow.
yeah, I just wanted to mention that, and I just think it's really interesting that that's coming up a lot. People are really starting to notice that.
Yeah. Well, and we talk about it a lot when you're walking um, in union with the Spirit of the Lord, then synchronicity becomes kind of a daily thing. It's a major way that I feel He communicates with us, and it comes from all over. And
Mhm.
again, it goes back to the fractal concept. If everything is a fractal through which the Lord can reach us, then yeah, everything can be in communication with us at all times.
Yeah.
And other people, and a book you read, or a book someone else read, or a song you hear, or that tree, it's really quite amazing. And it's just I there's so much wonder and joy mixed in with it. It's like we talked earlier about the anxiety, and yeah, that's there, but there's also a lot of wonder and joy. And I would say another thing I hadn't mentioned yet, that if there was one word that I used to describe the sense that I had in um, the inspiration for and creation of this album, it would just be awe.
Mm. Yeah.
Just absolutely letting myself um, be awestruck
Mhm.
by creation and by the Lord's creation. There's one more song on the album that what is the little brother perhaps to the other three, because it's the short song on the record, but I hope that people enjoy it. It's called Song of the Shell. And it was inspired by, so I went one time when I went to the Gulf. There's a trail that I like to run in Alabama near Gulf Shores that winds up at a beach. Every time I've been there, I find myself the only one on the beach. There's the resorts are miles down the coast both ways, so it's a place. Speaking of some place in nature where you can really worship and be close to God. Um, so what I thought I was going to do was go out there and enjoy waves, because that's the song I was creating. And what actually arrived was a shell that I found on the beach. And I thought it was beautiful. Its markings were beautiful. It was about as large as my hand. It was intact. And I thought, wow, I really want to take this. But I was very much in the mode um, of being respectful and grateful for nature and all my surroundings. So I thought, I'll ask the Lord. I'll open up and ask the Lord, Lord, can I take this shell from the beach? And immediately I heard no. And it was immediate. And so I thought, wait a minute, that doesn't seem right. So I thought, let me try that again. And so I opened up a second time and said, Lord, can I take this shell from the beach? No. And so now I was kind of surprised. I asked a third time and received no a third time. And so I decided, well, I will obey. I took a bunch of pictures of it because I thought I didn't want to forget it. I thought it was beautiful. I set it right down where I found it. And I started to walk away from the beach. And I distinctly felt the Lord stop me and say, go get that shell. It is a gift.
Oh.
And so then I heard my question for the first time. Can I take this shell? And the answer was no, but you can receive the shell as a gift.
I love that.
So I took it back to my friends that my wife and I were staying with, and we, I'm telling them this story, and I tell them about the Lord saying no, and that they couldn't help but notice I was holding the shell in my hand, and so they're like, "What did you just run?" And but then as we're surveying the shell, my wife pointed out that it looks like it has musical notation on it. And so the markings of the shell do appear to be like musical intervals, and there are 4 distinct lines of them.
Mm.
So I was like, I am going to get home and play this shell. I want to find out what this thing sounds like. And so I brought it home. I played each line. I approximated the intervals that I was seeing on the shell and recorded it. And so that's what the Song of the Shell begins with, is the music that I derived from the shell itself. And then as I got steeped in the just shells and how the mollusks create them through their lives and what they do for them, like these little helpless slimy life forms that have to hide as soon as they're born, start working on the shell immediately, and it grows with them. But through them they have both protection and flight, as it were, well, swimming through the water, because the scallop shells, they can open and close and swim. So I'm like, okay, so they gain both protection and mobility. And so I loved this image, very much a metaphor for God's protection of us. And also this was the one that it occurred to me that, as I said, the centerpiece of the song is an a cappella section in the middle that features the voices of all 7 of my family members. So it's it it's kind of I love the structure of the song. I love how it turned out. And again, like all the other songs, just the message and the hope that I hope is in it.
Yeah, and one thing I'd really like to add before I forget is I just love how you involve your whole family into the making of this album. Um, I feel like this is a family friendly channel,
Mhm.
you know, and also I feel like we sort of shortchanged the children, when it comes to ministry work and, just even if you're just a pastor or whatever, not just a pastor, I mean, that's a high calling, but have a church and whatnot, and not making it so that the children are not seen and they're not really a part of the ministry or anything. And I'm like, man, I feel like we've got this all wrong. We should involve them. Even I've, partaken in that sort of thought process because it's kind of part of the culture, but I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I'd really like to be able to show people how we can involve the kids,
Yeah,
because eventually they're going to take things over and they're going to need to run with it. So what are we kind of communicating if they're not a part of that, and they're not growing
absolutely.
and learning with us at the same time. So I
Mhm.
just think that is so awesome that your whole family is not only musical but also involved in your
Yeah.
ministry, which I would consider ministry work for sure. So
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a real privilege to have them all involved in it with me. They have, and now as this project goes out, then their contributions to this effort are also out there. And so, it's I just I'm 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 thankful for that. I'm thankful now for that they um who knows where they'll take that in their life. But yeah, I agree with you. It's important to let the children be involved. And some of mine are not all of mine are children's. We have our oldest is 28, and youngest is 13, and they all but they all sing on it. So yeah, it was fantastic.
they're amazing too, like very talented family for sure.
Thank you.
Everybody
Thank
sounds great. Yes. Thank you too. Thank you for coming on this channel and sharing your heart and all of your hard work. I can't wait to share it with everybody. And also to my viewers, make sure that you go and check out all of his work. Look at the description box below. I will have everything listed down there that you could possibly need in order to find all of his music. So yeah, and also in the works for my own plans, I hope to also do some dance videos, maybe some flagging and whatnot to some of your songs. So I'm
Awesome.
really looking forward to that and I'm excited about it. So yeah, thanks again for coming on here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and to all of my viewers, we'll see you again next time. Thanks for tuning in. Bye. Have a good one.